Welcome to the Committee of the Whole agenda for Tuesday, November 5th, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there are any declarations of interest. Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to re-up my previous declared conflict of interest as it relates to H1 on the agenda today of the heritage strategy, so I'll be stepping back from that conversation.
Thank you very much. I will now share our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty, First Nation, and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and the environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. I'm at item D, community announcements. Are there any announcements from members of council? Not seeing any at this point, perhaps later in the afternoon or the day. I'm at item E, and that is deputations. There are none at this time. Item F, presentations. There are none at this time. Item G, council committees, board and groups, ACKS Culture Advisory Committee, Carnaby Park Public Art. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Crothers? Councillor Roy-DiClemente? All those in favor? Sorry. Pass it to General Manager Carmazin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, the item prepared for Council on behalf of the Arts and Cultural Committee is proposing a procurement process contract and then supply and install of a public art piece for Carnaby Park. As per the Council approved public art policy, there is a requirement for request for proposal process to ensure a fair and equitable selection process, given the contract for procurement, design, and install of a public art piece is a town contract and funded, project funded by the town. We do have a reserve account also approved through the Council approved public art policy for this project. In addition, we do have an agreement with the developer and the community identified in the report for the procurement and install of a public art piece within that community. I know that the members of the committee are available for any questions that council may have, and staff's also available to provide any support for the report that's before council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. This is very exciting, and I'm looking forward to this process. I just wanted to look at the motions before us and just put them into a little bit better context, because usually we don't write them in this form. So the first one is to receive the report as per usual. The next one should read that council directs staff to work with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee to create a request for proposal to supply and install the public art piece in Carnaby Park. So we're just taking out that the committee requests and turning it into the council direct staff to work with ACC to do what's in that first one, or that second one. The third one, I'm not sure that that's necessary, but the research and prepare release a request for proposal, it sounds like it's a duplicate of the one above, just in slightly different words. And then the third one, that we approve the $75,000 expenditure. So I am moving an amendment to the motion. And Madam Clerk, did you get all that?
Just bear with us for a moment. We're going to put that in front of the council on the screen before you. Just one moment, please.
Okay. So the first and last are the same, and in the middle, we're going to just make a few changes just to clean it up a bit. Not changing the intent.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
We'll just wait until we have cleaned this up a little bit.
Madam Mayor, our deputy clerk has provided the suggested amendment on the screen, which is not changing the intent of the resolution, but it's just been updated.
And then subsequent to that, I'm not sure that we need that third one. I believe it's saying the same thing. If it's saying something different, perhaps someone can point that out. We're requesting, we're preparing the request for proposal, which would include doing the research and that sort of thing. So I'm asking to strike that. Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we can have a vote on the amendment, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. You're moving that? Thank you. Councillor Roy-DiClemente and then Councillor LaHaye.
Can I suggest that we say in the amount not to exceed 75,000? Because if it's not 75, I'd like to spend less.
Councillor LaHaye, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. I have a question about the timeline. And would it be appropriate at this time to ask the Chair of the Arts and Council Advisory Committee to give us some information about the timeline for this project?
It would be. Please. Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing us to present before you today. Question was?
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. The question is if you can share some information about the timeline for this process that lays ahead for this exciting project.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can't really talk to specific timelines at this time because I don't know what they'll be. But for sure, the process will start once we receive permission to go ahead. And in light of a busy fall, I don't think we'll do anything until the new year, at least to start. And then from there, it's an unknown until we actually start the process.
Thank you. That answers the question. There's a lot involved, and it takes a lot of time, as it did with the Holding Hope sculpture. But good things are worth waiting for, and we take it one day at a time. So thank you very much for the work that you do on the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. I believe this will be a staff-driven process, so I'm thinking that it should be staff that are commenting on the timelines, because the RFP process needs to go through staff. I just wanted to get some clarity on that, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, these processes are administrative processes led by staff, and so Mr. Karmazin's area would be leading that.
Thank you.
We have an amendment to the second, third, and fourth clause, and would like to move that first. Moved by Councillor. It was moved by Councillor Crothers. The council directs staff to work with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee to create a request for proposal to supply and install a public piece in Carnaby Park. And the next area has been withdrawn. And the last one, that council approves the expenditure of the funds in the amount not to exceed $75,000 provided by the developer and builder Queen's Landing Minto Communities, Inc. for this purpose be used. All in favor? And that's carried. So I have a main motion as well. Moved by Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Very exciting. We are at item H. now with Development Services with Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair. In the chair.
Thank you. I didn't have coffee. I got sidetracked even though I was here early and my computer needed to be rebooted, and it's been a morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a relatively robust agenda before us today. The first being Development Services presentation on our heritage strategy. Before I turn it over to staff for this, may I have a mover for receipt, please? Moved by Councillor Foster. Okay, so let's table that. Mr. Krubnik, would you like to present this, get us kicked off? I think our presenter is online.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have with us today Sean Goodeve, Principal of Goodeve and Associates, who will be making a presentation to Council today on the heritage strategy he is undertaking for the town.
Mr. Goodeve, welcome.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? You can see me okay?
We can, thank you.
Fantastic. Your comment around a robust agenda is duly noted, and I'll do my best to be brief and concise. Obviously, within this slide deck, we have quite a few slides here. A lot of it is in just regards to for information, so we won't be diving too deep, and we definitely want to leave room at the end of the presentation for comments. So thank you very much for having me back. It's been a few months, and I had the opportunity to speak to council about this project. The intent today is to provide some updates in terms of what's been happening with the project. And then to specifically kind of looking at the online surveys that were conducted over the summer, and then some of the other aspects of the research, both primary and secondary, and then to look into the draft priorities and recommendations and soliciting council's feedback in regards to that. So if I could please have the next slide, and I'll kind of just go over our agenda here. So first and foremost, we've got the legislative update. We just want to make sure we've, I've spoken with members of council about this, and it's just important that all involved, including members of staff that are in attendance today, are aware of these legislative changes. We'll talk a bit about in terms of the project methodology, the overview there, the stakeholder engagement, and as I mentioned, the priorities and recommendations. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So since we last met, there's been some interesting changes in terms of the legislation that was really the catalyst for this project. As you recall, Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, had a lot of different components to it, but specifically as it relates to this project, it's looked to the municipal registers, and in terms of the designation of heritage properties. And as you'll recall, that the reason why I say it's the catalyst for this project is because when that bill came out, we as a community were looking at a deadline of January 1st, 2025, to either list or have properties designated, or they would be delisted from the register and wouldn't be able to be put back on the register for consideration for designation for a time frame of about 5 years. Many municipalities were grappling with this. As you know, many municipalities have a long list of properties. I guess for context, I'll just kind of remind council that we look at designated properties within our heritage register, and then there's also listed properties within a heritage register. There's a significant difference between the number of designated properties than there are to listed properties. Some municipalities have upwards of 500 to 1,000 more listed properties and far less designated properties. So the point being here is that the timeframe has been moved out to 2027, which certainly is a benefit for us in terms of taking a conscious approach in terms of addressing the heritage within a municipality. And I just want to kind of point out that if the properties are not designated, so if they're unregistered and they're not designated by January 1st, 2027, then they'll be removed, and then they would not be able to go back onto or be listed again for a 5-year time frame. If it's voluntary and a municipality decides to remove properties from the registrar, then the clock starts at the date of the voluntary removal. So again, it's a 5-year period, but it's from that date of removal. Overall, though, this does give us some time to really kind of think about our properties within the municipality. So if I could please have the next slide. So in terms of the methodology, in terms of the background review and analysis that had been taking place, we talked a little bit about that last time. There was more analysis and research that transpired since we last met in the spring. And there was also the comparative municipal scan. That was derived out of the stakeholder engagement, as well as a secondary research in terms of what other municipalities within Ontario were doing around heritage, what their approaches were, what their funding models looked like, what their bylaws looked like. And then from that municipal scan, pardon me, we dived a little deeper into 3 specific municipalities. Again, that was based on feedback, analysis, and comments, from staff and development services. And so we did a deep dive into 3 municipalities. We conducted interviews with their senior staff that were responsible for heritage. So again, that was intent of lessons learned, identifying, best practices, and identifying as well within those municipalities that would be perhaps ahead of East Gwillimbury in terms of some of their programs and funding, and just identifying, how they got to where they are, why they implemented what they did, and what lessons that they've learned or things that they might have done differently. And so, that gives us an opportunity then to incorporate it into our heritage strategy. In regards, pardon me, in regards to the stakeholder engagement, as you know, we conducted staff interviews. We met with members of council. Again, that was kind of back in the springtime. We conducted some stakeholder interviews as well, external. And then we ran the business survey. So the business and the resident surveys, these were online surveys, and the structure of those flowed from the other components of the project ahead of it in terms of those other interviews. And as you know, we ran that survey from June until the end of August, throughout the summer period. The reason for that rather long engagement period was to solicit as much feedback as possible, knowing that these types of online surveys within East Gwillimbury, can be historically a little bit challenging in terms of response rate. So we want to extend that time frame for as long as possible to capture as many respondents and get as many responses as we can. And we also, and I should say we, speaking specifically about the Development Services Department and also communications, they're invaluable in terms of developing the survey, getting it up and operational, and promoting it. So the survey was promoted through the town's social media channels, through traditional communication channels on the town's website, as well as through the economic development newsletter. And there's also road signage up as well, directing people, informing people, residents and businesses about the survey, and directing them to complete the survey. And then in conjunction with that, there was a second round of interviews conducted with members of council, pardon me, in September, early October. And then obviously the report writing and research continued from there. I note here that there's this council presentation, which again is to provide you with an update, to provide comments specifically around the priorities and recommendations. And then we'll take that information back, revise it, and then from there we'll have staff do their review, and then we'll come back to council in anticipation prior to the new year. And you'll see that in the final slide in terms of the next steps. So with that being said, if I could have the next slide, please. Right. So here's some of the results of the survey. As it's noted here, we had 110 responses to the survey itself. you know, in an ideal world, we would have loved to have seen, you know, everyone in the community and every business in the community respond to this survey. However, we know that, you know, in terms of conducting online surveys, traditionally our response rate has been around this mark, around the 100 or so mark, depending on the topic, depending on the type of survey. That being said, we asked a whole series of questions. I didn't include all of the responses within the slide deck, you know, presentation today. I mean, I did speak to members of council about it, but you know, we asked, you know, within the survey, in terms of, you know, how long they've lived in East Gwillimbury, and I just want to kind of flag that one because we had a really high response from respondents that have been in the community over 20 years. That was a significantly higher, I think about 45% or so. And then also a really high response rate for those that have been in the community for from 1 to 5 years. And so, you know, in terms of that, that kind of presents an interesting spectrum in terms of established residents and businesses, and also those that are new to the community. So just a few of the highlights here in terms of the questions we asked. Obviously, these were in the spectrum from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and hopefully you can see the color coding here. The green is strongly agree on the left-hand side of your screen. So when we asked, you know, if we feel that, you know, I feel like conserving East Gwillimbury's built heritage is extremely important. You know, strong response rate here for strongly agree and also somewhat agree. Combined, you know, it takes us up over 90% in terms of the response. And I'll just move through the next slide too, please, here. Great, thank you. In terms of whether or not the town should continue allocating funds for programs, this is specifically around the heritage plaque programs. You would have seen these around town. They go on the buildings themselves on heritage properties. A strong support to continue that program and to continue allocating those funds. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. Whether or not the town should actively be promoting the unique heritage, again, through those channels that I mentioned earlier. There's, again, really strong agreement that the town should be actively promoting the unique heritage within the community. Next slide, please. And this is in regards to offering education and programming. Again, you can see that there is a strong response here. And obviously, to be noted, the blue in the middle is neither, so it's a neutral position. But response didn't have a strong sentiment one way or the other in regards to this. But again, you were looking at you know, significant proportion in the agreement compartment here, and the agreement side of things that that they think the town should be offering, you know, education and programming. Next slide. Thank you. So, in regards to funding and whether or not the town should be allocating public funds to support owners of heritage properties with maintaining their heritage properties. You can see the responses here. There is, you know, it's a little bit some agreement, disagreement as well. The orange represents the somewhat disagree. Again, blue is a neutral position. But again, looking at the agreement side of from the respondents, it is quite high. You know, when we've got strongly agree, it's around 45%, and the somewhat agree is around just over 20%. So, in broad strokes, there's agreement that there should be public funds for heritage property owners. And if I could have the next slide, please. So this is in regards to the heritage property tax program. I didn't include the context, the broader context that we provided to within the survey itself. Within the survey itself, we did speak to the ability through provincial legislation for municipalities to enact a bylaw that is in regards to heritage property tax relief. So there's more context to this particular question. And then at the end of it, we just asked respondents whether or not they're in support of the town adopting a heritage property tax relief program. As you may recall, again, this is, you know, municipalities have this ability through that they can enact a bylaw, and it ranges from 10 to 40% of the municipal portion of taxes as a tax relief. So obviously those taxes are not collected for those that own a heritage property. Again, just want to provide some context since it's been a little while since our last conversation. As you can see here, there's very overwhelming support that the town should be adopting or supporting a heritage property tax relief program. Thank you. And next slide. Drilling a little deeper, we want to understand whether or not having a property tax relief program would help to stimulate and increase the number of designated properties within the municipality. For context, currently, in fact, just since we last spoke, we have one more property that was designated. So we currently have 13 designated properties out of over 300 plus listed properties on the Heritage Register. And so, again, looking at that deadline now of January 1st, 2027, we want to ask respondents whether or not they felt that if they owned a heritage property, would this actually move the needle towards designation? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we really do want to be, promoting the benefits of designation. And again, it aligns back to overall supporting our unique heritage properties within the municipality. So again, excuse me, strong response rate here in terms of about over 70% that they said that they would actually move the needle and encourage them to designate their property. Okay, great. Next slide, please. That's the again, key findings, kind of high overview of the online survey. There's more questions within it in terms of the location of the properties, et cetera. But, you know, we want to provide those responses to you, members of council. And then to draw a bit of a through line here in terms of, you know, what are the ambitions and the goals of the municipality, and what have we articulated through our strategic plan, the 2022-2026 strategic plan, and also within our official plan. So I just want to kind of highlight some of these components here for you as a bit of a refresher. And so in terms of our council strategic plan, you know, we noted that we will protect and celebrate our unique heritage and natural environment. We looked at the kind of larger buckets here. There's kind of like larger areas, one of which being quality programs and services. So this is supporting and promoting heritage within EG. The other category there in terms of responsible growth, it's cultural heritage that's identified as a strategic priority. And this relates to development. So ensuring development occurs in intentional and sustainable fashion while focus on preserving the town's cultural heritage. And a key deliverable here would be advancing heritage conservation. I included that here just in terms of kind of broader context. And of course, when we look at the overall heritage register, we look at heritage conservation districts, and of course, the town is currently in the process of investigating and establishing a heritage conservation district. Slide, please. Moving on to the official plan. This is the town's official plan, and of course, you know, we don't have these memorized. So again, just kind of want to kind of bring that back up to light for us in terms of, you know, what that looks like in regards to heritage. As you're probably maybe aware, there's an entire section titled "Protecting Our Heritage" that is dedicated to specifically kind of cultural heritage, preservation and protection. Looking at, you know, these heritage resources, including everything from sites and artifacts, architectural and archaeological and cultural locations and places that are of value and significance. And we reference that a fair bit throughout our official plan through section 6. And again, I'm just want to kind of hit the high notes here for you. We can circle back on this, but I want to show you how much we're already established in terms of our understanding that we want to promote and protect heritage within the community. As we move into the next slide, again, this is kind of looking more at the overall objectives. conserving cultural heritage resources, preserving cultural heritage landscapes, and looking at the promotion of public awareness and appreciation of East Gwillimbury's heritage. You'll notice here some similarities in terms of some of these questions that we asked through the online surveys. And, again, this kind of gives us an opportunity to kind of cross-reference back with the public and the business community in terms of, their thoughts and feelings around heritage. But again, it relates back to our official plan. The next slide looks specifically, this is also within the Protecting Our Heritage section of your official plan, and it looks specifically around the Heritage Advisory Committee. It looks at the role of committee, primarily in terms of assisting and advising council on heritage matters. But there's also an element here in terms of promoting, through education programs, the heritage conservation within East Gwillimbury. And certainly, a large function, as we know, of the Heritage Advisory Committee has been around looking at the designation and looking at the properties that are listed within the Heritage Register, which we spoke about at length at our last meeting. So running through all of this brings us from the data gathering information, from the stakeholder engagement, primary and secondary research, and then certainly looking at East Gwillimbury's official documents, the official plan and the strategic plan. And we've developed this list of strategic priorities for the municipality as it relates to the heritage strategy. I'll go through each of these. Each of these has recommendations, and I'll go through those in a moment. But just looking at each of them. So celebrate East Gwillimbury's built heritage, protect and conserve East Gwillimbury's built heritage, support the town's Heritage Advisory Committee, and cultivate strategic partnerships. When we look at the first priority, a fair amount of this is opportunities for us to really start kind of focusing on our communication in terms of when it comes to heritage, updating our website, specifically the planning development has a heritage page, as you probably know. And really, I think we're looking here in terms of some of these recommendations is like bringing back that alignment back to the strategic plan and also the official plan. Looking at a digital map, this is something that's it's identified as something of a best practice, and I think would also hope both residents, businesses, and future investors, developers, etc., and that are looking at East Gwillimbury, so they can have a sense of where these properties are located. Of course, we have some static maps right now, and that was kind of part of the first, second slide that was taken from our Heritage Register, but a digital map online would certainly help people and be a lot less digging for information if it was available. Looking at stories, again, to really kind of, promote and, share with, our existing residents and businesses, but certainly those considering moving to East Gwillimbury and opening a business there, just around the fantastic and obviously very unique heritage within the community. And so we're looking at that. There's also an identification here in terms of the archival type of information, some photos and stories that may be starting to get lost as time goes by, and looking at a means of collecting these in some sort of a central repository. The Celebrate EG's Built Heritage continues, again looking at that the online information. The developing of that benefits of designation, this would really kind of help in terms of breaking down some of the myths surrounding designation, and we can distribute those throughout the community. Again, looking at some of these key stakeholders, and we've listed like developers, realtors, community groups, etc. That'd be promoting East Gwillimbury's built heritage. This one's interesting because within the survey we actually asked how much the built heritage was a driver for people moving to the community. And it was actually a surprising number of respondents that felt that the built heritage was really important for them. It really kind of helped them kind of speak to a sense of place and a sense of living in a community that was different and unique. And so again, looking at that in terms of our external communications and promotions. And then looking at additional kind of, training and education for council and members of the Heritage Advisory Committee. There's constantly new things that are happening within that landscape. I know we've got members of staff that maintain their heritage planner, like planning designation, and there's courses out there. So there's opportunities for us to continue, enhancing our knowledge and some of the changing practices. As we continue looking at the wayfinding program was identified within the online survey. There's a strong support for looking at that. So we're just suggesting here in terms of recommendation of just looking at a way of incorporating heritage properties. We know we don't want, to get to a saturation point where there's so much kind of, wayfinding and signage that it becomes distracting, but we're just proposing looking at that as an opportunity for staff to look at in the future. Again, promoting and building awareness of the Heritage Advisory Committee. Respondents within the survey indicated that a lot weren't aware of the work of the HAC. And so that's why this is included here. Again, looking at, more information campaigns and other, the promotion of policies and bylaws. I'm conscious of our time, so I'll kind of move through a little quicker on the next one so we can have time for questions. Obviously, protecting and conserving East Gwillimbury's built heritage. So the first one here is would be looking at developing a municipal heritage property tax relief bylaw. Obviously, that would be as a recommendation. The action of this would be directing staff to provide a council report and bring back to council, what that would look like. You've already had some feedback from Mr. Marshall in regards to some of the financial implications at this stage in terms of looking at, what that cost would look like. So obviously, this would be having staff conduct a deeper dive and analysis and bringing that back to council. Further to that, I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things here in terms of looking at some other additional, financial incentive programs. We talked about that last time we were together. We looked at different municipalities and we looked at how they're, had their financing and funding different education programs. Obviously, looking at the establishment of an online operating budget. Front of mind right now for council, of course, going through budget deliberations and considerations for for the upcoming budget. And of course, the Heritage Plaque Program. One of the pieces around the Heritage Plaque Program we should just mention is that there needs to be another component here in terms of following up and ensuring that these plaques are installed. And so that's where we're looking at another element to not just having the plaque program, doing the presentation to the heritage property owner, but certainly ensuring that the plaque is installed on the property, and finding a way to work with property owners in that regard. I'll move to the next slide. I realize we have a typo here on this one that didn't carry over from the initial listing of the priorities, but yeah, support the town's Heritage Advisory Committee. Again, this kind of speaks to the slide I showed you earlier in regards to the official plan and what it stipulates within the plan to the current terms of reference. So that needs to be updated. Ultimately, what we want to do here is, recognizing that we've got a group of volunteers that are passionate about heritage that are on our Heritage Advisory Committee. We also have staff representation, and we want to make the most of their time and make sure that they're supported and that they're focused. And that's really what Priority 3 speaks to. Looking at a work plan, ensuring that we're utilizing our resources, updating our terms of resources to align with other practices, and certainly the official plan itself. So I'll kind of move off to the next slide on this one. And in terms of, other elements around the Heritage Advisory Committee, again, kind of speaks in terms of, looking at the implementation of the various recommendations within our Heritage Register. So as we know, there was 23 properties identified for designation. So again, developing an action plan here, a work plan, to kind of help the Heritage Advisory move through so that they can effectively come back and advise council. But again, when we think about that work plan, we're thinking about dates and timelines and resources. Very fortunate in the municipality that you have a heritage planner on staff, and obviously, she is helping this committee, and so we're seeing an opportunity just to refine that work and to support the committee even further. And again, relating back, thinking big picture, around, the designation of these properties and the implications of Bill 200's 2027 deadline. Priority 4, this one we're really looking at, casting a bit of a broader net, looking at, who are others within the space that can be working with us to help preserve, protect, and promote East Gwillimbury's unique heritage. And so this is where we're looking at outside opportunities. We're looking at events and programming within this. We're certainly looking at opportunities around more heritage, tourism promotion, maintaining, relationships with other municipalities in terms of what they're doing, in terms of their bylaws and actions they're taking. We know we've flagged a few, recent occurrences there. It's kind of going back a few months with the town of Newmarket, what they're doing with heritage. And again, looking around that, the business community and supporting them. We had quite a few responses on the survey from businesses as well. Pardon me. Who are really looking to further kind of promote their structures and their heritage. So, and of course, maintaining the dialogue with other municipal departments and keeping an eye out for funding opportunities in the future. So, as we move to the next slide, and then we can kind of we'll pop things open to for comments and discussions here. Of course, with these recommendations. We didn't want to provide, so much text on these recommendation sections, but as you can well expect, each of these recommendations has specific timelines looking at different funding and funding implications, funding opportunities. We're looking at time constraints, in terms of internal staff and how do we move forward with these initiatives. And again, we're looking at those, KPIs and the performance measures. How do we know that we're tracking it, we're on success? And again, that comes back down to, building out those kind of effective work plans. So in terms of next step, obviously, we want to have the conversation with and present this to council today. Hear your feedback and certainly receive any additional feedback post this meeting. Internally, staff is going to be reviewing the strategy. So we'll make any revisions to these recommendations based on the feedback we hear today and afterwards. Revise the strategy accordingly. Have staff review internally, then we'll do the council review, and then the anticipation is to come back in December with the final strategy report. And thank you very much. I know that was quite a bit of information, and I appreciate you hearing the presentation today on this exciting project. Happy to address any questions, and of course, we've got members of Development Services that are in attendance. Should there be any questions outside the scope of this project. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Goodeve. That's certainly a lot of information for us to digest. I'll open the floor to questions from members of committee. Go ahead, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sean, it was great to read this this presentation, and thanks for that. I guess I'm 6 years now sitting with the Heritage Advisory Committee, and it was satisfying to see some things that you had listed there. A list of properties that we want to move forward with designation. We're kind of sitting with that list now, and I think maybe this presentation provides us with that little bit of punch to bring that forward. We have talked at great lengths about education and programming, the maintenance support, the heritage tax relief program, an electronic venue for fax and a call out to residents looking for all that information. So I think this strengthens what we were doing, and like I say, it was satisfying to read that I think it ensures me that we as a Heritage Advisory Committee are on the right track, and I look to I really want to see this move forward. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, and I agree with what my ward mate is saying, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the survey. There's 110 responses, which is a very, very small number of our residents. And so I just want us to be cautious when we present survey results in a public forum like this that are not statistically significant. They're heavily biased. The type of people that would fill out a survey on, do you think heritage is important, are people who think heritage is important. I would like to know who the one person was who bothered to fill out the survey and said they didn't think it was important. we want to make, I think the most significant finding in this is that I know a lot of work went into promoting the survey, that only 110 of our residents thought that this was important enough to fill out the survey. And to me, that's the biggest finding from the survey. So, well, it's always good to be asking our residents what they think. I think we just have to be really cautious when we're using data that is heavily biased and not statistically significant. So I just want to put that caution out there, because we often will bring surveys in and try and pretend that they're more than they are. So this is just a small snapshot of the people who in our town who care about heritage and what they're thinking about it. So I just want to put that caution there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? I wanted to just add a couple of things from a framework perspective. I really like the idea of the 4 priorities: the celebrate, the protect and conserve, the support the work of the committee, and then cultivating those strategic partnerships. As we start to put the frameworks together and we look at, for example, 1J, it kind of talks about the work of the committee, which would conflict with the idea of supporting the committee. So I want to try and make sure that we eliminate duplication and make sure that we have as tight and as focused a list of strategic priorities as we can, because if we put too much in it, the work becomes unwieldy. And so if we can strengthen that and tighten it up. Same thing with the plaquing program. Is that the work of the committee? Let's make sure that we keep that plaquing program within that strategic priority so that we're not overlapping. That's just, they're more mechanical pieces of feedback from my perspective. But I also, I was pleased to see the results of the survey, acknowledging that it's a small sample. I also recognize that there's that, the silent majority, which would say, I'm neutral about this, and I don't think that this affects me, and so I'm going to be that middle post in that survey response, which is I'm not going to say one way or the other because I don't think it impacts me. So I was pleased to see that there are people who were new to the community who had responded. I thought that was helpful as well. So I'm just looking forward to seeing. I see your hand, Councillor Crone. I'm just looking forward to seeing the next report as we tighten this up and we bring this and move this forward. I'm also kind of keen to see more about how we're going to prioritize those properties that we don't want to lose. So I'll leave my comments there. Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just listening to you, you kind of sparked a question in my mind, and I would say this to either to our presenter, to staff, or to even the council liaison to this committee. Do you feel that we're leveraging our Heritage Committee as best we can with this endeavor? Whoever wants to take a stab at this first.
Well, I'll throw it to Mr. Goodeve since he's our presenter, and then
Okay.
maybe if he's not comfortable, then we'll find someone here in the room and poke them.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yeah, Councillor, excellent point. I think that the composition of the committee's shifted a little bit. I think that I think there's several things here. I think there's an opportunity with this. Again, yes, looking at the the responses and the response rate. I look at that as a very as an opportunity when I think about to Councillor Carruthers' position there in terms of like, well, there's people who are interested in heritage. Fantastic. We've got we know we've got 110 people that are obviously passionate about heritage. Maybe we can cast a bigger net. Maybe we can start soliciting some more of those people to be helping out. Maybe when we look at the committee, we can kind of break into subcommittees. Maybe there's an opportunity here where we have an education and programming piece. So I think it's a very good point, Councillor Crone, in terms of capacity as it stands right now. But we've got dedicated people that are really excited to move things forward, and I think developing that strategic work plan with them and helping to kind of guide those efforts, and then cross-validating that in terms of time and capacity, as well as staff's capacity, right, in terms of being able to support the committee. But it seems to me that a lot of this tends to be low-hanging fruit. I will say in terms of action planning, traditionally there's the short, kind of medium, long term. I also include a now. within that, because there's some things we can do now, right? We don't need to kind of push that off. And obviously designation needs to be, kind of a top of our list because we do have that deadline. And we're already doing some really interesting work, right? I mean, look at the Anchor Park recently, right? As an example that related to heritage. These are some interesting aspects of programming opportunities, and there's probably some opportunities as well cross-departmentally within the town itself. Again, looking at some of these opportunities around the programming and education piece. So now that I've totally spoken for maybe for staff and just provide my opinion, maybe I should turn it back over, Madam Chair, and see what staff has to say.
Staff, anything further to add? Mr. Krubnik?
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. We do have a member of staff who, regularly visits the Heritage Advisory Committee. I will certainly take that feedback, Councillor Crone, back to her and have that discussion about leveraging the committee in other ways to help assist a future strategy forward for the town of BG.
Thank you. I think there's also the piece in the strategic partnerships where if this is about telling the stories, then maybe that's where the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee comes in. That's where the library staff come in to help create those stories. Maybe even the Sharon Temple. The only one that sort of struck me as an issue that I didn't feel we could easily address was the storage of materials and having a central repository, because when you're dealing with archive materials, you need temperature controls and those sorts of things. And I know that our community has struggled with what to do with those things. So I think that one is going to be a big one for us to take a bite out of. Councillor Foster, did you want to add anything further at this point before we move this?
Yes, thank you. So right now we are actually recruiting for the Heritage Advisory Committee, and I just received a list, I think late last week, of the applicants that we had, and there are a couple there that I think are to be excited about, that I'm looking forward to conducting some interviews. I do need to speak to our staff liaison, Victoria, who, quite frankly, keeps us on the straight and narrow. That was a good segue, Jack, to bring that in. So we have a great committee. The knowledge that's there and the passion for heritage is unbelievable. I don't know if there's much to say. I guess going back to Councillor Crone's question about how the advisory committee is used, I think there's work to be done on both sides. I think it's easy for the committee to get frustrated with things that either go to council or don't go to council or whatever. But I also think part of that is, I guess, sits with the Heritage Advisory Committee itself. I think we need to be a little bit more upfront and in your face, for lack of a better term. So I think there's work to be done on both sides.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table from Councillor Foster. Any further discussion on the motion? Otherwise, we will receive the presentation with thanks. All those in favor? And that any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Johns, I forgot that you had declared an interest on this. I'll just acknowledge that now. Normally, I would acknowledge that up front, so my apologies. So that motion is carried, and thank you, Mr. Goody, for joining us this morning. I think it's very early your time, so even more appreciated. So next item on our agenda is Planning Branch Report DS 2024-28. It's an official plan amendment application from Beechway Developments, which is 18474 Yonge Street. We have a motion that we receive it and that we approve the official plan amendment and incorporate the subject lands within the settlement area boundary. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Johns. Okay, Mr. Krubnik, did you want to present this item for us?
Thank you very much, Councillor DiClemente, Roy-DiClemente, apologies. I will actually invite our planner, one of our planners, to present on this item. Just briefly, Matthew, if you might be able to speak to it. It has come before council recently, and it's coming back to council today because we're in a place to recommend it to council for the official plan amendment. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Daou. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Council and members of the public. Thank you, and through you, Chair. This staff report before you today recommends approval of the official plan amendment to redesignate 2.13 acres portion of the subject lands located at 18474 Yonge Street from agricultural long-term growth area to low-density residential, and include said lands within the town's urban center and the Greenland secondary plan. The official plan amendment is the first step in the planning process. The applicant will also be required to submit a community design plan, draft plan of subdivision, zone amendment, and site plan application to facilitate the proposed mixed-use residential development. A notable piece I'd like to highlight is the natural heritage system area located centrally on the balance of the property, raised at the public meeting. Staff would note that the subject lands of this application do not include any environmental features. Apologies, I lost my train of thought here. Nonetheless, planning staff note that this, I already mentioned that. No. Planning staff note that through subsequent planning applications, a gambit of studies and drawings will be requested as part of a complete application, one of which will be an environmental impact study, which will look at the feasibility of development in this area, among other things, which the town will have peer reviewed by an external expert in this field. With that said, I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Daou. Any questions? So I'll ask a question just for clarification, and that is, this is more of an administrative process. This does not provide any planning approvals or any planning standing for the application. In fact, the site plan the proposed site plan that's presented is just a concept. It has nothing, it doesn't provide any standing. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, what I will say is that this is an official plan amendment, so it does make the lands yellow in our official plan. It does give them approval for low density residential development. The shape of the development may change, but that's what's before council today to give them that approval for residential.
Okay. And there's also, if I'm not mistaken, a designated heritage structure on these lands, that not the 2.13 acres, but on the entire parcel that it's connected to.
There is, and sorry, I might have to turn to Matthew just to ask if that is in fact designated or listed. I cannot recall off the top of my head.
I believe it is listed through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And yeah, the long-term plan's in discussion with the applicants, and there was a previous staff report that I've read that has been to council, I believe in 2021 or 2, that looked at strategies for that house, which will relocate the house on the sort of western portion of the subject lands once the east-west road has been constructed for the proposed mixed-use development.
But this application will help facilitate that.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Johns. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a very similar one, Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2024-29, an official plan amendment application on behalf of Sundial Homes. And it is it's almost identical, except that it reflects an address on Green Lane. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Johns. Mr. Krupnik, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And once again, yeah, you're right. This is similar, I guess, in the type of application it is, and in the kind of rationale for bringing this application to council. So I will have another planner of ours, Nicole Schroeder, introduce this application before council.
Go ahead, Ms. Schroeder.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Mayor, council members, town staff, and residents. The report before you today is a recommendation report for a proposed official plan amendment located at Concession 1, Part Lot 101 and 102. The applicants are proposing to redesignate a 10.22 hectare or 25.3 0.25 acre portion of the subject lands from agricultural long-term growth area, white belt lands to low-density residential and medium-density residential. In turn, the official plan amendment will also bring said portion of lands within the town's urban structure and more specifically within the Green Lane secondary plan. To provide a bit of context, the lands were originally thought to be included in the complete community's secondary plan. However, due to the ownership size of the parcel and location, the town accepted the standalone approach before you today. Planning staff note that 2 written comments were received to express concerns related to the official plan amendment, specifically housing prices, the changing of businesses in the area, and speeding and traffic noise along Green Lane West and Bathurst Street. Staff appreciate and sympathize with the comments. However, the subject lands were brought into the urban center by York Region to accommodate projected growth over the next 30 years. All legislative frameworks seek to promote growth in the areas brought into the urban center. In closing, the official plan amendment is the first step in the planning process. The applicant will also be required to submit a community design plan, draft plan of subdivision, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan control application to facilitate the proposed residential development. Planning staff are available for questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of committee, any questions? I have one. Just wanted to confirm that if this moves forward and we put these lands into the built boundary, does this now mean that the applicant has to apply for permission to remove trees?
Apologies, through you, Madam Chair. So two things would be, what is still applicable is the regional woodlot bylaw. We also have our own town-initiated tree protection bylaw that's coming back to council. And my understanding is that it will be back before council in the very near future. I could always ask our GM of Parks to touch on that matter, but that would be something then that would be applicable to this parcel of land.
So I guess from where I've been sitting as a member of council, when lands become development lands, they then become subject to rules about topsoil stripping, earthworks, tree removal, etc. So if we approve this, does Sundial now have to play by the rules?
There will be through you, Madam Chair, there would be a number of requirements for any future applications in terms of tree removals, in terms of compensation, in terms of natural heritage protections. So those are items that would be provided to staff for review through future application, because they would be subject to a new application process, a new checklist of items and reports that are required for that application.
Thank you. Members of committee, anything further? Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Johns. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a planning branch report regarding a request for a street name change by Patapsco Developments, Inc. and DG Group, Queensville Phase 5. We're looking to receive the report and approve a modest adjustment to one of the street names in that subdivision. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Foster. Ms. Schroeder, I see you're at the microphone. Should we skip over Mr. Krubnik and just go right to you?
If that's allowed.
Yeah, he's nodding. Yeah, go ahead. I'm in the chair. I'm allowed.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair. Again, good morning, Madam Mayor, council members, town staff, and residents. The report before you today is a recommendation report for a proposed street name change in the approved plan of subdivision, Queensville Phase 5. The name of the street that was selected from the approved street name inventory was Gwen Burkholder Drive. The proposed street name change is from Gwen Burkholder Drive to just Burkholder Drive. The name change request comes from Bill Burkholder III to honor not just Gwen, who is his mother, but his grandfather and father as well, as a more inclusive approach to recognize the contributions of the Burkholder family to the development of East Gwillimbury. The Burkholder family has been in the Queensville community for more than 100 years. Fire and Emergency Services in York Region have reviewed the proposed name change and have no objections. Their only request is to ensure that the street name remains as Burkholder Drive, as there is already a Burkholder Street in the region. Planning staff are available for questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Crothers.
Where is the other Burkholder Street?
I think it's in Stouffville.
Stouffville, thank you. And I'm wondering, I'm looking at the map and it looks like a crescent. Do we name crescents? I'm just wondering if crescent is very much more different than a street versus a drive, just to make sure that they're very separate.
Go ahead.
To be quite honest, I'm not sure how exactly if crescents essentially go with crescents or if they could be a street or a drive. I don't know. I know, again, back in the day, that was kind of how they were named, but based on the shape, I'm not 100% sure they correspond any longer.
Okay, I only suggest it just because I think if someone's looking for Burkholder, drive and a street to me are kind of the same thing, but a crescent is very different. So if this meets the criteria for that, just something to consider. Thank you.
It was under the approved street name inventory and it met the criteria, so thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Foster. Go ahead, Councillor Crone. Are you voting or are you requesting to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to give my support, Madam Chair, to this. Not so much a question, just a comment that I think that if this is coming from the family, we can honor that request. And certainly the Burkholders have a long heritage in this community, and it is, as you said, a very modest request. So happy to support the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything further? Seeing none, I've got a motion on the floor from Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is a report DS 2024-31, an extension of approved draft plan of subdivision, which relates to the very same subdivision, Queensville Phase 5, and they're looking for an extension of, I believe it's 3 months. Mr. Krupnik, did you, before I introduce you, may I have a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Johns. Go ahead, Mr. Krupnik.
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely correct. This is the same subdivision. One of the primary reasons for this small 3-month extension is that, is the street name change. That impacts also the applicant's ability to have that name ratified by council, I guess, in a couple weeks' time, and then after which they would need to register their subdivision, and it leaves a very narrow window of opportunity there. And if that one is missed, it introduces new complications. So a small increase of 3 months will give them that breathing space that's needed for registration of the subdivision.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Foster. Thank
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess it's regretful that the name change is kind of one of the reasons that pushes this forward. Mr. Burkholder and I, when we happened to bump into each other at a town event, I don't remember what it was, and first started talking about this, I don't think either one of us realized that time was going to be such a crunch. So this is certainly good that we can move this forward.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Councillor Johns that we approve it. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is bylaw branch, not development services this time, for DS 2024-32, which is a ground sign variance request for Woodbine 1. May I have a motion? Moved by Councillor Foster. Mr. Krupnik, did you want to present this one to us or add any comments?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll be brief about it. I do have Harinder Singh with us here today too. He's our manager of bylaw. Essentially, it is a very large site that this request pertains to, and to make operations on the site somewhat easier and safer for everyone, they are requesting a second sign on this site, and there is significant difference between in terms of. Distance between one sign and the other. So I don't think clutter, in essence, would be a concern here, but I'll let Harinder speak to this request.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Singh.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council and members of the community. Essentially, the report seeks council approval for a signed variance request from Woodbine 1 Group for the installation of an additional ground sign at the Loblaws Distribution Center located at 18574 Woodbine Avenue. Currently, the town's sign bylaw permits only one ground sign per lot. This request would increase that to 2 in efforts to enhance public safety at this specific location. The proposed sign measures 24.25 feet by 11.66 feet, is strategically positioned at the northern entrance for the employees and visitors, helping to direct traffic and reduce potential confusion with delivery truck access and their main operations entrance. The request requires approval from the Ministry of Transportation due to the property's proximity to Highway 404. Open to any questions if you have.
Okay, thank you. I've got a motion. Did we get a motion? Yes, we did, from Councillor Foster. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. How will these signs be lit? My concern is about light pollution.
Mr. Singh?
Through the chair to Councillor Crothers, they will be illuminated. They are not electronic signs, to my understanding, and as per the drawings proposed. We do have technical staff from the Loblaws distribution staff online if you have any further questions related to that.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Crothers?
Yes, and it brings up more. I'm concerned about residents and the light in the area having 2 illuminated signs. And I'm also trying to understand where these are located. So it looks on the map that they're located on the highway side, but then the report says it's the entrances. So can you help me understand that?
Through the chair to Councillor Crothers, they are located on the Woodbine Avenue frontage, so on the opposite side of Highway 404.
Okay, the diagram that we have is so small, it's hard to see where they are. I see the labels on the highway side, so that's where I thought they were over there. Okay, I do have concerns with residents in the area having illuminated signs, but I understand the necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, so I have a motion from Councillor Foster that we approve contingent upon the Ministry of Transportation approval. All those in favor? Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Finally, on the agenda, we have a memorandum that's back in front of us. It was deferred from our October 22nd meeting. It's a memorandum regarding rental fee reductions for Kicks Dance Studio. Not sure if we're just going to receive this, or where would you like to go with this, Mr. Krupnik?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're right, this is coming back to council for a second time. It has been, my understanding has been determined through conversations with our solicitor as well that, this is not an action that the town should recommend or undertake. So what I will ask is that council receive this item as a memo for information, but I will request that on page 2 of the council memo, the last paragraph under analysis be striked because it can read as perhaps a recommendation.
Thank you. So may I have a motion from a member of committee that we receive the memorandum and that we amend it, that we receive it as amended? So moved by Councillor Carruthers. All those in favor? Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And that's the end of our prepared agenda. Mr. Krupnik, did you have anything further other than, these were 7 things, so I hope that you're,
Yeah,
you're done.
thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it may have been nice to spread some of this wealth to our next agenda, which is looking lighter. But other than that, thank you very much, and look forward to working with council.
Members of committee, anything? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and we will move forward with item I, Parks, Recreation and Culture, with Councillor Crone in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have just one item on the agenda, and that is the Parks and Culture report on recreation programs and non-resident rates. Before we hear too much about this, could I have a mover for this, please? A move by Councillor Carruthers. Thank you. Mr. Karmazin, if you could fill us in on this, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the report prepared for council proposes a fee adjustment to include a non-resident fee or a surcharge. In addition to opening up our registration for residents early, this non-resident fee or surcharge is a common industry practice amongst York Region municipalities, and it is something that we are looking at implementing prior to the operation of the Health and Active Living Plaza project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have related to the non-resident fee report presented to council.
Thank you, Mr. Karmazin. Do we have any questions from committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll just add my 2 cents that thank you, Mr. Karmazin, for presenting this, and knowing that it's going to generate about $13,000 in revenue a year. I think that's another nice place where we can generate revenue where we don't have to go to the taxpayer for it. So thank you for that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Mr. Karmazin, do you have anything else you'd like to share with committee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Does committee have anything they'd like to ask Mr. Karmazin? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and we will move to Corporate Services with Councillor Carruthers in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have just one item on page 106 of the agenda, and that is the staff compensation draft policy. I'll turn it over to General Manager Gandhi to take us through that.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. The policy in front of you is one that is on the heels of the council compensation policy that was presented to Committee of the Whole a few weeks ago. The reason why we're bringing this in front of council is because we did have capital budget to undertake a full-time staff compensation review. And in doing so, we also realized that we didn't have a policy that essentially establishes the groundwork for moving that forward. So that's why we decided to pause and bring this forward to council. It has a number of components that speak to internal equity. We wanted to make sure that we're abiding by legislation. It speaks to market competitiveness and employing a certain benchmarking tool in terms of the municipalities that we use as comparators. And it also speaks to timing for the full-time staff compensation review. And then the last component is the percentile. And so this is the percentile that council approves for us for the full-time compensation to occur relative to the comparators that are listed in this document. So with that, I'm open to questions, and we also have with us Delia Dumrath, who is our Director of People and Belonging, if questions go to her.
Thank you very much. And can I have someone move this, put this on the table for discussion? Councillor Johns. Thank you for this report. As someone who's very policy-driven, I love that we are getting what we're already doing put down in policy rather than just this is the way it's always been done. So I'm glad that we have this increased transparency. Staff are our greatest asset, so making sure that we have a compensation policy that's fair and equitable is very important. Is there any other questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Seeing none opposed, that's carried. General Manager Gahn, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item, excuse me, at item K, legal and legislative services with myself in the chair. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Marshall. Back to you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is just one item on the legal and legislative services, which is a memorandum. This is a routine update regarding the outstanding items list, which is reported to Council twice a year. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the memo itself. However, if there are any questions about the specific updates within the memo, it will be best for those to be addressed by the respective general managers.
Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover? Councillor Johns, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. There are no items under L through P. Is there anything from members of council under these headings? I'm not seeing any at this time. So I will move to item Q, which is an adjournment. Moved by Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.